The following is a summary of the Sicha of the 28th of Cheshvan, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and Shabbos Beis Kislev, Parshas Toldos Tofshin Nun Beis. We've spoken many times about the names of the Parshias, and since Al Pi Torah they are given a certain name, that certainly is exact, and we can actually see this from the name of this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha starts off with the words Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak, and there's a similar Parsha previously, Ve'ela Toldos Noach. And if the name of the Parsha was to be after the first word of the Parsha, then it really should be the other way around. The Parsha of Noach should be called Toldos, because it says Ve'ela Toldos Noach, and Toldos should be called Yitzchak, because it says Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. So if the word Toldos comes before Noach in Parshas Noach, the Parsha should have been called Toldos, and the second Parsha where we have Toldos, our Parsha should have been called Yitzchak, and yet we find the other way around. The first Parsha is called Noach, and our Parsha is called Toldos. And the reason for that is because the name of the Parsha gives out the entire content of the Parsha. The principal content of the Parsha of Noach was to tell us about what happened to Noach, and consequently the Seder is called Noach. Whereas in the Parsha of Toldos, we've already heard lots about Yitzchak's life previously in Parshas Vayeir and Chayei. This Parsha is principally to tell us about his Toldos. However, there is a certain lesson we can learn from the name and the word Noach and the word Toldos, independent of the toichen, of the content which they have in the Sedra. Noach principally talks about the person themselves. Toldos talks about Masim Tovim. So we have the word Noach principally meaning the name of a person, the person themselves, and Toldos referring to their deeds. Yet, if we actually have a look about the name and how it fits in with the contents of the Sedra, it seems to be a fusion of opposites. In the Sedra of Noach, which the word Noach speaks about the person, Rashi says immediately, Ve'ela Toldos Noach refers to their Masim Tovim. And in the Sedra of Toldos, which the word Toldos seems to refer to their good deeds, Rashi says, Yaakov ve'Esav ha'amurim beparsha, it refers to the actual person. So we must therefore say that there is a Masim Tovim, there are deeds which are connected with Noach, and then there's Masim Tovim which come later as Toldos of Yitzchak. Why does the Seder of Noach come before Toldos? So quite simply we could suggest, because in order for a person to engage in good deeds, there needs to be menucha, which is the idea of Noach. Like the Rambam says, that in order to do mitzvahs, there needs to be tranquility. However, there is actually a deeper reason as to why Noach came before Toldos, not only because chronologically that has to be the order, but also spiritually, as we will explain. The principal difference between Noach and Toldos we can explain by stating that Noach is a parsha that principally has to do with the state before the giving of the Torah, whereas Toldos, after the birth of Yitzchak, and Avraham Avinu was the beginning of the process of the giving of the Torah, and especially after his bris milah and the birth of Yitzchak, that refers to the avodah post Matan Torah. So therefore, we could say the following. Noach refers to the Jew, the Yid, as they are before the giving of the Torah. the very being of a Jew, whereas Toldos refers to the Jew as they engage in Torah, after the giving of the Torah. To explain this, there is a Tana Devei Eliyahu which says the following: Shnei Devarim Kodmu La'olam. Two things preceded the world, Torah v'Yisrael. Ve'einu yodea eze mehem kodim. I don't know which came first. Kishehu omet saves b'nei Yisrael, daber el b'nei Yisrael. When the Torah says, speak to the b'nei Yisrael, command the b'nei Yisrael, I know that Yisrael kodmu, that Yisrael came before Torah. In other words, there is a mila, an advantage in Yisrael, that they came before Torah itself. However, in order to reveal that mila, that advantage, there has to be Torah. As it says in Tana Devei Eliyahu Rabbah, Mashal lemelech basav adam. This can be compared to a king of flesh and blood. Sheyesh lebanim b'seich beisoi. He has sons, princes in his house. V'yesh le eved zaken b'neihem. And he has an old servant amongst them. Shehu melamed es banov, who teaches his sons, Durachim noim umasim toivim, pleasant ways and good deeds. Kach divrei Torah, so too are the words of Torah. Machriin es Yisrael lekaf zechus, they weigh the Jewish people to the side of merit. Mechanchen oisem b'mitzvahs, they educate Yidden in mitzvahs. Umevian oisem lechaye olam haba, and bring them to Olam Haba. So we see that Torah is compared to this old servant in the house of the king that reveals the mila, the advantage of the prince. So let's have a look at that in closer detail. The principal advantage of the Yid is that Yisrael v'kud shebrichu kol echad. Yisrael and Hashem are one, which means independent of Torah and mitzvahs, independent of their status in Torah and mitzvahs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves Yidden because they're his children. He has an essential love for them, even if they are not pursuing the pleasant ways of Torah. Actually, the opposite is true. A child who follows the pleasant ways and the maasim tovim of Torah, one loves them because of what they're doing. There's a logical reason to love them. However, a wayward child who is not following those ways, then the love is because of the essential bond. However, that love is orchestrated from Hashem himself, but it not necessarily it has to do with the advantage of Yidden. Nevertheless, when Yidden engage in Torah mitzvahs, and it's recognizable within them the good and pleasant ways of Torah and their good deeds, so then the essential advantage of Yidden becomes revealed in a revealed way, because the walking in the ways of Torah mitzvahs actually reveals their essential level. And even though that essential level is far transcendent of revelation, nevertheless, since an essence is not limited to being either in a concealed or a revealed state, it can also be revealed within. When a Yid does Torah mitzvahs, the essential level can be revealed within that itself. Similarly, we can say about a Yid themselves, their body and their soul. Just like in Torah, we know that Yidden came before the Torah, because it says in the Torah, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, speak to the b'nei Yisrael. Similarly, we can prove that what came first, the body or the soul, is that in fact the body came before the soul. And in fact the whole creation of the soul was in order to elevate and refine the body. And in fact the creation of the whole order and chain order of creation was for the body. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, chapter 49, that the Bechiras Ha'atzmus, the choice of Atzmus, is specifically in the body. Because when it comes to choice, if there's an advantage of one item over the other, then it's not true choice. True choice is, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when the body of the Jew is similar to the body of the nations, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses that body, that is true choice. In fact, there's an advantage in Bechira, in choice, over the Ben, over the son. Because by a son, the love of the father is because of the essential bond between them. But it's not from the very essence of the father. Whereas Bechira, choice, that hasn't got to do with that which is being chosen. Rather, it has to do with the one who is choosing, which is Atzmus itself. And just like it is the difference between the body and the soul, a chelek elokami mal, a soul, when you grasp onto part of the soul, you've actually taken the entire thing. So too is it the body. The body, when you don't see any mila, any advantage in the body, apart from Hashem choosing the body, therefore, when you see the Hashem choosing the body, it's the very essence of Hashem choosing the body. In other words, when Hashem is looking at the soul, is looking at it like a child, and there is a natural connection between the two. The body, however, is so distant. When Hashem chooses that body, that's a bechira from the very essence of Hashem. The truth is that the choice of Hashem in the soul is also coming from Atzmus. Why? Because the fact that Hashem chose that a soul should be a son of Hashem is because Hashem chose it to be that way. However, since the neshama essentially does have the advantage of being a child, we don't see in it the true choice of Atzmus. Davka, when the neshama, the soul, comes down into a body, what becomes revealed is the very essential level of the soul, that Hashem chose it even beyond its being a son. On the other hand, when it comes to the body, we don't see in the body the reason why Hashem chose the body. However, when a neshama comes down into the body and engages in Torah mitzvahs and elevates the body, so then what is revealed within the body is the choice of Atzmus. And therefore, once the choice of Atzmus has been revealed in the body, that also reveals the choice of Atzmus in the neshama. With this we can explain that which it says, that la'asid lave, in time to come, the neshama, the soul, will be nourished by the body. Now the soul nourishes the body. In time to come, the body will nourish the soul. Why? Because nowadays, principally the avodah is the refining and elevating of the body. And therefore the main thing is the revelation of the light of the soul within the body. However, in time to come, after all the refining has come to an end, then the principal emphasis will be on the revelation of the essence, which transcends any revelation. And then what will be felt will be the essential bond and the mila, the advantage of the body, and hence the soul, which is Giluyim, revelation, will be nourished by the body, in which it will be revealed the essence. So it comes out, therefore, that by the soul coming into the body and engaging in Torah mitzvahs, actually the connection with Hashem is revealed on all three planes. We have the revelation of the etzem, the very essence, because Hashem chose. We have the revelation because of Giluyim, because there's an engagement in Torah mitzvahs. And we have the fusion of the two, each one revealing in the other, the body revealing in the soul, and the soul revealing in the body, its source in Atzmos. Now we can understand why Noach comes before Toldos in the avodah of a person. Noach refers to the very essence of the Yid as they stand higher than Torah. On that level, there's a essential advantage of the Yid. However, when the neshama comes down and engages in Torah mitzvahs, the drachim noim, the pleasant ways, and the masim tovim, the good deeds, that reveals the advantage of the body and illuminates it. So then you start off with Noach, the soul, coming down into the body and producing Toldos. So, in fact, in each one of the sedras of Noach and Toldos, you have this dynamic. You have Noach starting off with the person themselves, but as Rashi translates, that it refers to Toldos Sem Shal Tzadikim as Masim Tovim, which means that ultimately the etzem, the neshama as it is in its source, needs to come down and engage in good deeds. However, those are good deeds of Noach, which precede Matan Torah and are principally on a spiritual plane. Later on, when we're already preparing for Matan Torah, then you have Toldos. Toldos means the Giluyim, the revelation of mitzvahs and Masim Tovim. However, ultimately, they reveal Yaakov Esav Amurim Beparsha. They reveal the true essence of the soul. In fact, we can bring this double dynamic also into what Rashi translates. The Ve'elu Toldos Yitzchak is Yaakov Ve'esav Ha'amurim Beparsha. Yitzchak, the principle that Toldos Yitzchak, what the offspring of Yitzchak being the progenitor of the Jewish people, we can imagine contains everything in the future of a Yid. It contains Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov is a reference to the neshama. Esav is a reference to the body. As we know that Esav comes from the world of Tohu and Yaakov comes from the world of Tikkun, Ma and Ban, neshama and Guf. So Yaakov represents the soul and Esav the body. Now, the principal revelation of the choice of Atzmos in something which in itself has no advantage, that is specifically in the body, in Esav. And that's why the first child was Esav. And that's why he was an Admoni. Admoni coming from the word Ma'oid, Bligvul. And he was also hairy. That goes on the 13 Tikunei Dikna of the 13 hairs of the beard. And since thereafter the neshama comes down into the body, refines the body through Torah and mitzvahs, and reveals the bechira, the choice of atzmos in the body, that's why Esav says to Yaakov, give me min ha'adam hazeh. Esav the body says to Yaakov the soul, give me from this adam, give me ma'oid, give me bli gvul, reveal in me the body, the bechira, the choice of atzmos. And this is the meaning of Vayivaz Esav es habechira. Usually we translate it as Esav despised the first right. However, here we can translate it that it was an advantage. Esav said, don't give me the Bechorah, in other words, don't recognize me for some revealed advantage, being the first, but recognize me for my essence of whom I am. Nevertheless, Rashi says it was Yaakov ve'Esav ha'amurim b'parsha, Yaakov coming before Esav, because if you want Eila, a revelation of things, it must come through Toldos, it must come through Torah mitzvahs coming into the body, and then you can have a revelation of Esav, of the very essence of the body. And this comes later in the parashas of Vayetze, Vayetze Yaakov Be'er Sheva going to Chorana, the avodah of Yaakov in the birur of Lavan. Later in Vayishlach, how Yaakov comes back and refines Esav, and finally in Vayeshev, Yaakov resting in tranquility, and this brings to perfection the Noach, the whole journey of revealing Noach, the very essence of the soul, which causes a nachas ruach, a tremendous joy, both for the Boirei, the creator, and the Nivra, and the creation. And this is all connected with the time which we were in now, which is the beginning of Chodesh Kislev, and its connection with the Parsha of Toldos. The whole month of Kislev, especially the Yom Tov of Chanukah and the revelation of Torah's Hachsidus, is connected with Shemen, with oil. That was the Nes of Chanukah. Pnimis HaTorah, the inner dimension of the Torah, is connected to oil. Yofutzu Meinesechel Chutza, and it has to be by the door and outside, spreading out the teachings of Pnimis HaTorah. Shemen, oil, refers to the very essence of something, and that's why oil flows through the entire entity. And consequently, the connection between Noach and Toldos over here, specifically in Chodesh Kislev, is that we want in the revealed entity, there should be revealed the very essence. And this is why the festival of Chanukah goes into the month of Teves. The month of Teves is, as it says in the Gemara Megillah, a month where the guf, nana min haguf, the body of the Jew, has hana, benefit from the body literally of Hashem, meaning that when you have the neir, the mitzvah of Torah Or, when you have the candle of Torah and mitzvahs in Chanukah coming into the body, revealing within the body its very essence, so then you have the guf of the body becoming one with the very essence of Hashem, a full revelation of a dira lo yisbarach, a dwelling place to Hashem, literally to Atzmus Mamash.